Hi, I'm going to analyze a short story which is called The Man Who Evolved. The story is about a biologist, Dr. John Pollard, who have found out and proved that the comics ray have an effect on the structure of the organism, which is called the cell mutation. He is curious to know that the future form of human evolution and where will this evolution stop. Thus, he conducted an experiment with the use of his own invented machine to find out the answer. The experiment is conducted by exposing Pollard himself in the concentrated comics ray. He asked his friend Mr. Dutton and Mr. Wright to turn the rays off after every 15 minutes in order to see if there is any changes on his body. At the first stage, he turns into a tall and strong man, but in the final stage, he becomes a simple protoplasm. In the human nature aspect, two of the protagonists, Mr. Dutton and Mr. Wright, feel skeptical about the experiment of Pollard at first until they saw Pollard's body transformation after finished the first stage of the experiment. For ID ego superego, at the beginning of the experiment, Pollard's unconscious mind is hidden by the ego and superego. He tells his friend that the purpose of the experiment is to take all mankind forward through millions of years of evolutionary development. But as his power becomes larger and larger, his unconscious mind rules his whole mind. He even wants to rule the whole world by his paranormal power. For extroversion, Pollard is an extrovert. He knew that he may die in this experiment. Thus, at the beginning of the experiment, he gave a signed attestation of him to Dutton and Wright that they were not responsible for what he was undertaking. In the human relationship aspect, at start, Mr. Wright joined the short-term group of Dr. Pollard and Mr. Dutton to get involved with the experiment because of the peer pressure and he wants to feel belongingness of the group. But after finish the first stage of the experiment, there is conflict between Pollard, Wright, and Dutton because they held different view on terminating the experiment after the first stage. When Dr. Pollard becomes more powerful, Mr. Dutton and Mr. Wright are forced to help Dr. Pollard to continue the experiment. They cannot leave the group because they are afraid being killed by Dr. Pollard. In the human development aspect, Dr. Pollard knew the cause of cell mutation, which was cosmic ray, and he tried to conduct the experiment to test his hypothesis that the cosmic ray could help the evolution of humanity that matched Bacon's scientific method idea. And Dr. Pollard divided the experiment into several parts. Each part lasts for 15 minutes, which is the same idea with Decker's divide and conquer. For sci-fi genres and theme, this story is paranormal, hard science fiction, bodily transformation, and gothic. For the plot and action, the setup is Dr. Pollard invites Mr. Dutton and Mr. Wright to get involved in the experiment. The confrontation is Dr. Pollard transformed to a monster and he used his paranormal power to threaten Mr. Dutton and Mr. Wright to help him to get to the last stage of bodily transformation. The climax and the reward is the last stage of the experiment. Dr. Pollard changed to a simple protoplasm and have perished in the fire. The 36th dramatic situation is the ambition and madness.
For the narrator, the story used the first-person narrator, which focusing on the character and the relation to another character. For example, Dr. Pollard and Mr. Dutton. It shows the dramatic changes on the characteristic of Dr. Pollard and instant emotion reaction on Mr. Dutton and Mr. Wright effectively.
For the quality of language and dialogue, the dialogue shows the thought of protagonists deeply. For example, Dr. Pollard said in his last mutation that I can no more feel the emotion of love or friendship, neither can I feel those of ambition and pride. For the effectiveness of the character, one of the protagonists, Dr. Pollard, was a mad scientist. He concerned the result of experiment on the evolution of humanity more than everything. By adding the other two protagonists, Mr. Dutton and Mr. Wright, as Dr. Pollard's friend, which can help to bring out the unconscious mind hidden inside Dr. Pollard to the reader. For example, Dr. Pollard told his friends that he can no more feel the emotion of friendship anymore, which gave readers a great impact on the dramatic changes of Dr. Pollard's characteristics.
The time setting of the story is in the 1931 and the place is set in the laboratory inside a house which is located in the village. The scene and the inner feelings of the protagonist brings a secret image of the protagonist, Dr. Pollard, to the readers. For example, when the two of the protagonists, Mr. Wright and Mr. Dunton, first saw the laboratory setup, which include the huge metal cylinder, the large vacuum tube and the motors of the power plant, which gives the reader a mystery feelings. The scientific idea of the whole story is to use the cosmic ray to speed up the process of the human evolution. In fact, the cosmic ray is a high penetrating power radiation, but the Earth's magnetic field deflects cosmic rays and the power of cosmic ray will decrease if it is near the Earth. The cosmic rays thus effect on the human body, which is similar effect to the X-ray does. High level exposure can result in increased risk of cancer or death. Thus, the author's idea is not workable in the real life. That's the end of my analysis. Thank you.